Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Wa sallallahu ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala ahli bayt at-tayyibin at-tahirin. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. Merciful Allah, spare me long enough so that I may complete my mission. In remembrance of his undying love and loyalty for his and our Master Abu Abdullah Hussein, strengthen your love and loyalty with the salawat ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. The second, in remembrance of his sister Masa'ib Zainab, salawat ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. And the third, in allegiance and honor of our current Imam Sahib al-Asr wa Zaman, salawat ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. There's a hadith from our Holy Prophet, Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, where he says, "Usikum bish-shababi khayra, fa-innahum uraqqa af'ida." He says that we should concentrate and put our efforts on the youth, for surely these youth have warm and delicate and soft hearts. Now, my previous lectures have been regarding what today psychologists, physicians, doctors, lecturers have been saying about raising children, and how the biopsychosocial model has a direct effect on every human being, no matter what age they are. That the psychology of that person and the social environment play a massive part in that person's biology. So whether they become ill or not, whether they suffer from disease or not, whether certain genes in their body turn on or not. As we know, a lot of diseases, they say, are hereditary. So we receive from our parents and grandparents and so on. But what triggers these genes is important. Now, today I was going to concentrate on answering some of the questions that people had given forward regarding the lectures. A lot of questions were given. What I've tried to do is put them together. So it may be that I might not answer your question today, and I apologize for that due to the lack of time. But for those, I've tried to put them in certain groups. Now, the first one is that my son is 12 years old, and after hearing a lot about the science and what it does to the body, the damage and so on, I've tried to change my ways, and I've done everything I can to have a bit more patience with him. But he's 12 years old, and I fear that already the damage has been done. So what can we do to fix this? How can we reverse any damage that has been done? Now, the first answer to this question is that the fact that you have understood and realized that there is a problem, that such a problem exists, and the fact that you want to make a change and take it, have more patience and so on, this already, in my eyes, is 66% of the battle won. In other words, you've already taken a very big step towards correcting it, because a lot of people don't even want to acknowledge that this problem exists. And when they do acknowledge it, they don't have the patience to fix it. So already you've done a very big step going forwards. Now, the last thing that we need to do is just be mindful of it and to remember to have patience when we're encountering certain situations, that we should listen to the advice given by these lecturers and doctors. Now, there's something called neuroplasticity. So every person has obviously a brain, and this brain has the ability or the capability to rewire itself. So yes, although your son is 12 years old and a lot of the wiring has already taken place, so he has certain behaviors that come out naturally, you can rewire this brain. Now, it's not only that we concentrate on the child, but also on our own rewiring, because we also have faults, and we also have picked up things from our parents which may have affected our biology or psychology. Now, Dr. Marion Diamond in the 1970s, just to open this up and to make you aware of neuroplasticity, she experimented on rats. Now, they use rats because the rat's central nervous system is very close to a human. Now, the conclusion that I want to draw, you'll understand that if a rat can change, then obviously a human being can change. Our brain and our central nervous system is much more complicated and much more able to adapt. Now, what she did is she took rats from every age group, so old rats, middle-aged rats, young rats, and then she took baby rats and deliberately damaged their brain. Now, she then gave these rats certain toys to play with and let them engage with other rats as well, so like they had social engagement. And she saw that after a period of time, when she put them into a test where they would have to find their way out of a maze, the ones that were subjected to social engagement and games so that they could develop their brain, they were able to find their way out of the maze better than those who didn't have anything, who were left in isolation. Now, afterwards, she autopsied their brain. And she saw that the frontal cortex, which is the area that controls a lot of the behaviors, it's the same for human beings. The frontal cortex is what controls your behavior. She saw that for the ones that she'd given them games and given them social engagement and so on, their frontal cortex was a lot more developed. They had a lot more neurons, so brain cells, and there was a richer blood supply to this area of the brain. So it shows that with social engagement, depending on what kind of social engagement, yesterday I said that it shouldn't be with peers of the same age, it should be with adults so that you learn the maturity of the adults. But it shows that we have the ability to adapt and to develop our brain further, even in old age. Now, the third point is that her conclusion, in fact, it's a very interesting conclusion. She said, no human being is worth giving up on. As in everybody, no matter what age they are, they can be worked with, they can be developed, they can be helped. Now, the third point is that we aren't like other people. Alhamdulillah, we have the Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam. There is such a thing as tawassul. We all believe that the heart of the person and is in the hands of Allah and the Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam. If we do tawassul to them, that Ya Allah, I've made mistakes, but I want to correct them. I don't want my mistakes to be carried on into my generations and so on, for my children to be affected and then for their children to be affected. Come and help us to find the right path. And the fourth thing is that when we are actively working with our children, to be mindful of the fact that sometimes we tell them to do something, but we don't do it ourselves. And in their eyes, we then are seen as hypocrites. Now, I heard this from one of my students who was 9 years old, and he said that it's funny that when you're watching TV and then some bad language comes, you say, oh, go out, and you send the child out. But then you yourself sit there and watch it. How come? Now, if a 9-year-old picks this up and says this, then it's telling me and you that, hang on a second, you're telling me to do something, but you're not doing it yourself. Why should I listen then? This is a very big point because it turns them off mentally. They think, why should I listen to you? What's the point? You're doing it. Like a lot of adults tell their children don't smoke, but they're smoking themselves. A lot of the time the child ends up smoking. There's a hadith I want to link it back to where a lady brought her son to Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. And she said, Ya Rasulullah, tell my son to stop eating dates. No matter how much I tell him, he doesn't listen. And it's causing him to get spots on his skin. He gets irritated from these dates. Tell him to stop. Rasulullah turned to her and said, okay, go and come back in 2 or 3 days' time. Then I'll tell him. The lady was thinking, what's the wisdom behind this? Go back in 3 days, come back. Are you so busy that you can't tell him to stop eating dates? So she takes him home anyway. She comes back, and the Prophet sits the son on his lap and he says, listen, the dates aren't good for you, okay? You see that when you eat them, you get spots, you start itching. This isn't good for you. You get irritated yourself. So cut down on the amount of dates so that you don't irritate yourself. And the boy listened. The mother comes back and says, what was the wisdom behind this that you told me to go and come back after 2 or 3 days? Rasulullah said that you were telling him not to eat dates. I told him exactly the same thing, not to eat dates. But the difference between me and you was that you kept eating dates and would tell him to stop eating dates. And when you brought him to me, I said, in order for my words to affect him, I have to stop eating dates myself. So for those 2 or 3 days, I myself refrained from dates, so that when I do speak to him, my words have a wisdom behind it, have a power behind it. These are lessons for me and you, that we can't just talk and guide when we ourselves are not acting. Otherwise it has no effect. If the words come from the heart, they sit in the heart. If they come from the mouth, they go through the ear and out the other. The second question was that a friend of mine has a son who she thinks has ADHD. ADHD is a disorder where children have a hyperactivity. And so it means that in school they don't listen to their parents, they're very, very aggressive at times and so on. She says that, is there a reason that he does this, and what can we do in order to better his performance at school and so on? Should we give him medication? Now, a lot of parents, they fall into the trap of taking their children to a doctor. The doctor quickly diagnoses the child with ADHD or ADD, certain disorders, and then they prescribe them medicine. I was reading an article which was written, I think, in 2003 in the Daily Mail, and there was one not so long ago, just 10 days ago, there was another article regarding how they think they've been overprescribed. So they're saying that doctors are misusing their powers in order to get rid of patients. Instead of giving the parent good advice on how to bring up the child and how to fix the solution, they just prescribe medicine. Now, maybe there's a conspiracy behind it. Some people say, some of the doctors have said there's a conspiracy that obviously the drug companies want to sell their medicine, so they tell the doctor, prescribe it, and you get a commission from it. And that's why in Australia the percentage increase has been 73% in the last 5 years. Now that's not genetic. ADHD can't be genetic if it's 73% in the last 5 years. You see that there's a problem here, that people are losing patience and don't know how to deal with the child. They can't speak the child's language. Now, one of the words that the lady used was that the child acts out. He acts out at times. Sometimes when we say a child's acting out, what do we think? We think the child's being aggressive, being unresponsive, disobeying us. No. If we look at what the actual word acting out means in the English dictionary, what does it mean? It means to act something out. So I'm hungry, I do this to you. And then you understand, I want food. Or I'm tired and I say, you know that I'm tired. Acting out is a means or a term used for when I don't have the words to explain what I want to explain. So I say this. I remember in China, when I went to China, I couldn't obviously eat the food. And I was looking for a McDonald's to eat. I just wanted some chips. It took me 4 hours to try and explain to people, go from this shop to that shop to that shop. And in the end, I just said to them, look, this, chips, burger. And they understood. But this is acting out. So when a person doesn't have the words to make you understand, they do it through behavior. The child who's acting like this is not mentally ill or does not have a disorder. It just wants to try and make you understand something, but we don't understand or we don't have the patience. So what does it do? It takes it to the next level. It becomes aggressive. And then we tell it, go sit down, I'm cooking. So then it says, okay, now I really have to get the attention. I'll break something. I'll throw myself down the stairs. And they do this. Children do this to grab the attention. I remember the other day, my niece came to me with a small cut on her finger. It wasn't bleeding or anything, but she kept nagging me. Look, I need a plaster, I need a plaster. And we were obviously busy trying to clean up, but I saw that, look, she just wants to be heard. The more we tell her, no, it's nothing, look how small it is, it's not even bleeding, go away. Then she thinks, hang on a second, you haven't understood what I'm trying to say, so let me kick up a fuss, so you do understand. So I took her and I sat her on my knee and I said, look, I can see it looks like a very big cut. I tell you what I do, when I get a cut, I normally cry a bit and I feel better afterwards. Shall we sit down and cry? And she looked at me and she laughed. as if I'm mad. She looked at me as if I'm the mad one. And she goes, no, it's okay. And she went off. And then we never heard again about the cut. Children just want to be heard, and that's why they act out. It's not a disease. So in my opinion, I strongly disagree that after seeing all the evidence that you take him to a doctor, this child, if it's a girl or a boy, I don't know, do not take it to a doctor yet. Build the relationship. Listen to them, sit them down, make that bond, and if their behaviour doesn't get better, then yes, seek medical attention. But from the evidence, from the articles, from what doctors have been saying, a lot of the time, this isn't the problem. The problem is we just don't understand what they want. The third question is, I've been trying to explain things more to my daughter, and I feel that a bond has grown between us. What's the best way to get a message through to any child? The answer for this is that, I'll shorten this one due to time. The brain has 3 different methods or 3 different modes to encountering a social challenge. What they do is that the first mode is immobility. So what they do is they immobilize themselves. Sometimes you see an animal, when it feels threatened, it just stops and freezes and thinks, okay, it won't see me. Right? So sometimes our brain does this. When we can't run away, or we don't think we have the power to get away, we switch our mind off. We let our mind go away. Which is why a lot of the children today in classes are daydreaming. Because they know they can't get up and leave the class, so they use this method to zone out. The second method is hypermobilization. It's when you have the chance to escape. So what you do is that you turn on your stress hormones, adrenaline, cortisol, so on, and you start fighting, punching, shouting, and you manage to escape. But in these 2 modes, the ability to understand and develop your brain is missing. This gear is only engaged once you use the third engagement, which is social engagement. Now, for social engagement to happen, you have to calm the child down, allow them to believe that there's no threat around them. We have certain parts in our brain called neuroreceptors. It's like perception, except it's neuroception. So subconsciously, your brain is always assessing the fear around you. The problem that we have with children today is that they don't feel comfortable, so they never engage. The clutch is never put for that gear to come in, where they can socially engage. Teachers will know this, who work with children, that if you build that bond, they will listen to you more, they'll understand more. Why do you think they call the cleverest children in the class teacher's pet? What's a pet do? Pet follows you around, pet has a good link with you. See, these are all terms we use every day, but we don't actually understand what we're saying. When we do stop and think, we realise that these all have a meaning. Now, there's something called opposition-defiant disorder. I don't. That's the yes. Okay. Just what are you doing now?
I'm pushing my hand.
And now what?
I'm pushing it.
Okay. You see, when I put my hand with Aghay Maqsoodi, there was just a small force. But as I pushed harder, what did you do?
I pushed harder.
He pushed even harder. We don't realise that when we are talking to our children, a lot of the time, in fact, 100% of the time, when we're trying to order them to do something, this is what we're doing with their brain. We're pushing our brain against theirs, and they're feeling the resistance and pushing back. It's Newton's law of motion. Every action has an opposite and equal reaction. So when you say, put your coat on, it's cold, the child says, no. I said, put your coat on. No. Now I'm going to hit you. Go on then, hit me. This is what happens. So this force, we should realise that this doesn't have an effect. There's no point in doing this. It only damages the bond. What we have to do is, this is from Jennifer Clarey, another sociologist and psychologist who works with children, is she says, come onto the side of the child. Instead of pushing against the child, push with the child. You know when you want to point out a star in the sky, and it's very small up there, you don't say, by the way, look at that star up there. I'm pointing there, where are you looking? It's not very clear for you. You're saying, where? And I'm saying, up there, up there. But in order to make you understand, I come onto your side, I put my head near yours, and I point out using the same vision. There it is. So when we want our child to understand something, not to do something, because it's against their benefit, whether it be a sin or a bad behavior or anything, or we want them to do something because it's to their benefit, then we have to come on their side. We have to sit with them, engage them by lowering the fear, by calming them down, and then we can make them see that point. Now, I've overrun my time a little bit, so I sincerely apologise for all of you who I've made to sit and listen to this. I hope that it will be beneficial for all of us, because obviously, as the Prophet says, أوصيكم بالشباب خيرا.